When was the last time you tried to focus and failed? Not because you were tired, not because you were lazy, but because your mind simply slipped, pulled away by a buzzing phone, a flickering screen, 1,000 unfinished thoughts fighting for attention. Now imagine this. You sit in a quiet room, staring at a problem your grandparents would have solved effortlessly. But your brain resists. It feels slower, foggy, overloaded. Here's the unsettling question no one wants to ask out loud. What if we're not getting smarter anymore? What if we're getting dumber? For nearly a century, scientists believed human intelligence was on an unstoppable upward trajectory. Each generation, smarter than the last. Higher IQs, faster reasoning, better problem solving. This phenomenon had a name, the Flynn Effect, but something strange has been happening beneath the data. In certain countries, IQ scores have stalled. In others, they've begun to fall. So the real question isn't whether intelligence once increased, it's this. Is the Flynn effect reversing? And if it is, what does that say about the future of the human mind? Segment 1, The Disturbing History. In the 1980s, a political scientist named James R. Flynn noticed something that didn't make sense. When researchers compared IQ test results across generations, they found a consistent rise, roughly 3 IQ points per decade. This wasn't isolated. It was happening across continents, cultures, and socioeconomic groups. Rural villages, industrial cities, post-war nations rebuilding from rubble. At first, scientists assumed it was a testing error. Then they thought it was genetics. But genes don't evolve that fast. Flynn proposed something far more unsettling. The human environment itself was reshaping the architecture of the mind. Industrialization forced people to follow systems. Formal education trained children to manipulate symbols rather than objects. Scientific thinking rewarded hypotheticals over instincts. For the first time in human history, entire populations were being conditioned to think abstractly, not for survival, but for reasoning. A farmer in 1900 might ask, how does this help me survive? A student in 2000 asks, what does this represent? That shift seems small. It isn't. It marked a transformation from concrete intelligence, rooted in direct experience, to symbolic intelligence, where meaning exists independent of reality. For decades, the Flynn effect became a quiet symbol of progress, a reassuring narrative. No matter how chaotic the world became, intelligence was marching forward. Until the data changed. Segment 2, The Reversal No One Expected. In the early 2000s, researchers in Norway, Denmark, Finland, the UK, Australia, and parts of Western Europe noticed something chilling. IQ scores were no longer rising. They were declining. At first, the drop was subtle, fractions of a point, easy to dismiss. But over time, the trend held, and then it accelerated. This wasn't happening everywhere, but it was happening in nations with advanced education systems, stable nutrition, and access to technology. The very conditions once credited for boosting intelligence. That's what made it terrifying. The Flynn effect wasn't just slowing down. In some places, it appeared to be running backward. Scientists scrambled for explanations. Had education systems become too standardized? Were children reading less and clicking more? Had IQ tests failed to keep up with a changing mind? Then a darker hypothesis emerged. What if modern life, the very environment that once sharpened human intelligence, had crossed a threshold? What if the cognitive tools meant to amplify thinking were now outsourcing it? Segment 3, The Cognitive Cost of the Modern World. Your brain did not evolve for infinite information. It evolved for scarcity, focus, and deep attention, to track prey, read faces, remember danger, and plan slowly. But today, your mind is under constant assault. Notifications, algorithms, endless scrolling, rapid-fire dopamine hits. Every interruption trains the brain to switch, not sustain. Neuroscientists now observe something alarming. Modern brains excel at rapid scanning, but struggle with prolonged concentration. Attention spans shrink. Working memory weakens. Cognitive fatigue sets in faster. We're not thinking less, we're thinking shallower. And this matters, because IQ tests don't just measure knowledge. They measure abstract reasoning, pattern detection, working memory, problem solving under pressure. All skills that deteriorate when attention becomes fragmented. Even reading habits have changed. Long-form reading is declining. skimming is rising. The brain adapts to what it practices. And here's the most disturbing part. The Flynn Effect originally rose because society forced people to think abstractly. Now technology often does the thinking for us. Why calculate when an app does it instantly? Why remember when you can search? Why imagine when you can scroll? The human mind is efficient, but efficiency always demands a sacrifice. Segment 4. Intelligence isn't one thing, and that's the real danger. There's another layer to this story that makes it even darker. IQ doesn't measure all intelligence. It measures a very specific kind: logical, abstract, analytical thinking. And while those scores may be dropping in some regions, others aren't. Emotional intelligence, social navigation, visual spatial processing, rapid information filtering. The mind isn't collapsing, it's reorganizing. But evolution doesn't ask whether the outcome is wise. If future environments reward speed over depth, reaction over reflection, stimulation over silence, then intelligence itself will be reshaped. Not higher, not lower, just different. And that raises an uncomfortable question humanity may not be ready to face. Are we losing the kind of intelligence that built civilizations? Slow thinking, deep focus, long-term planning, at the exact moment we need it most. What makes this shift even more unsettling is that it's happening silently. No alarms, no sudden collapse, no clear moment where intelligence falls. Just a slow erosion, almost polite. Children today are not less curious. They ask questions constantly. But those questions are answered instantly, effortlessly, without resistance. The struggle that once forged understanding is removed. And struggle matters. Cognitive psychologists have a term for this: desirable difficulty. The idea that effort, confusion, delay, even frustration is essential for deep learning. When the brain doesn't wrestle with information, it doesn't store it. When it doesn't store it, it doesn't integrate it. And when it doesn't integrate it, intelligence becomes fragile. There's also a growing concern about cognitive offloading, the habit of outsourcing memory and reasoning to external tools. Calendars remember dates. GPS replaces spatial navigation. Search engines store facts once etched into the mind. Individually, these tools feel harmless, helpful even. Collectively, they reshape cognition. MRI studies show reduced activation in brain regions responsible for memory formation when people expect information to be digitally accessible later. The brain, always conserving energy, decides remembering is unnecessary. Why build muscle when you can use a machine? And yet, intelligence isn't just about access to information. It's about holding complexity, tolerating ambiguity, and thinking through uncertainty. These are slow skills, quiet skills, unrewarded skills in a world optimized for speed. If the Flynn effect is reversing, it may not be because humans are becoming incapable, but because the modern environment is no longer selecting for depth. The frightening possibility isn't a dumber humanity. It's a humanity optimized for immediacy, brilliant at reacting, terrible at reflecting. And if intelligence evolves according to what the world demands, what kind of minds will tomorrow's world create? The twist in application. You might not be taking IQ tests, but you've felt this. That moment when your attention fractures after 10 seconds. That anxiety when silence feels unbearable. That urge to check your phone even when nothing happened. This isn't weakness. It's conditioning. Your brain is adapting to the environment it's fed. The real danger of a reversing Flynn effect isn't lower scores. It's a future where humans struggle to think deeply enough to solve the problems they've created. Climate systems, artificial intelligence, social fragmentation. These require slow intelligence, the kind that thrives on patience, complexity, and uncomfortable thought. And the question becomes deeply personal. If intelligence is shaped by the environment, what kind of mind are you training every day? Because if the human mind can be sharpened by progress, it can also be dulled by it. And that leads to an even darker question, one psychologists are only beginning to confront. What happens when technology doesn't just influence how we think, but starts thinking for us? And that is why you need to watch the next videos.